And I said, we need to have a program to really enable women to true leadership. We need to be treated as equals. That's just it. Ambition and a bitch are like just, they seem to go hand in hand. You give your kids the roots to grow, and then you give them the wings to fly.
Welcome to Loud and Lifted, the podcast where we turn up the volume on women supporting women. I'm your host, Betsy Ham, and I am especially excited about today's episode. Not only is this our very first guest, but this is a guest of someone who shaped my journey in the very beginning of my career over 20 some years ago. She's a mentor, a role model, and a true rock star, the incredible Kim Schaller. Kim is a brand building, revenue driving marketing powerhouse with over 25 years of experience across entertainment, hospitality, and travel. She spent 17 years on the executive committee, senior leadership level of a legacy rich company, leading growth strategy, customer experience, employee engagement, and shareholder value. Kim was the first and only female vice president at her company during her tenure. And while she was trailblazing her own path, she was just as intentional about clearing the way for others. Long before women in leadership was trending, Kim was creating a space, starting the conversation, and doing the real work to help women rise. So, buckle up. This episode is about grit, growth, and what it truly means to lift others as you climb. So, let's get loud and lifted with the one and only Kim Schaller.
I
I feel like I need
love
coffee.
that.
I didn't run that by you ahead of time. So,
No,
hopefully
that
you're good
was
with that intro.
fantastic.
No, Kim, thank you for being here. And as I said, it's only fitting to start with you because you were there at the start of my career and really helped form what I thought about women in leadership and were the true icon back in the day. So let's go back like 20 some years, right? To the beginning of at least my relationship of when I knew you and being the first vice president, or sorry, the first woman vice president, actually the first vice president of marketing too, which is a whole other conversation. But take us back to that time and how you handled that and just sort of where you were at that time.
Oh my God, I'm so honored. I'm so honored, and I'm so proud of you. Oh
Oh,
my
thank
God,
you.
you're like a shining star in my life. You really are. So
Oh,
thank
thank you.
you. And I think which we'll touch on, again, it wasn't always easy with us, and that's what even
No.
makes it more enduring. Women relationships aren't always that we're lockstep all along the way. We had some times, but bottom line is I'm here. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I
Nice.
moved to Scottsdale. But I was with HENR, Hershey Entertainment and Resorts, for 31 years. And I was thinking back on this, Betsy, because I was there. I started in 85, which is crazy. And I was advertising coordinator for Hershey Park. And I was there for 10 years doing every job imaginable in the marketing area. I just would raise my hand for anything, any assignment I did, worked my ass off. And then I got recruited to Space Center Houston in Houston to be director of marketing there. And that entire 10 years at HENR, there was never any women's programs. So when I left, I was there for 3 years, and I got a call about potentially coming back to HENR in a brand new role to oversee sales and marketing for the whole company. So I came back, which was amazing. I came back, and then I was there for another 21 years. But one of the things about coming back, I felt when I got back, like women in the organization were so thirsty for programming around communication skills and work-life balance and exposure. And so I decided I think I'm going to try to develop a program to really develop women. And I told you this the other day. The irony was, it was really to help benefit me too. Because every room I sat in, every meeting I attended, it was all men and me. And I knew I needed to develop my own skills in terms of how to deal with men. So I created this program that was beneficial. I'm such an ass. That was beneficial to me as well as to the other women in the organization.
That's not being selfish though, because again, you were worried about other women too, and the fact that you shouldn't be the only one in the room.
Right.
So when you first brought that up, how was that received? What was the feedback from?
Well, that was I totally fucked that up. I scheduled a meeting with Scott Newcomb, God rest his soul, who was the CEO at the time, who has since passed, truly a mentor of mine. And I have to tell you, men have been incredibly supportive of me throughout my entire career. So I really do love men and the relationships that I've had. So I got all ready, and Scott was a finance guy. So I put all this data together on, our workforce, the percentage of women in leadership positions, the comp percentages. And I went into Scott, and honest to God, if you could like visualize it, it was like my fists were clenched. And you know how I can be.
Oh,
Like
yeah, yeah. Were you pointing also? Because you like
I
to
was
point.
pointing and swinging my eyes. And I said, we need to have a program to really enable women to true leadership. We need to be treated as equals. I went in there more militant. And I threw all this data at him, and he was sitting there, and God love him. He looked at me and he said, I want to continue this conversation, but you need to go back and talk about goals, talk about how is this going to help the organization? How are we going to be able to retain and recruit and professional development? You need to get off your high horse. And I walked out of there with my tail between my legs. I truly did, but he was right. And I think for any women out there listening to this, you've got to monitor and watch your approach. If you're trying to build consensus and trying to get people all on the same side, you can't go in there.
A
You
little
can't go in
emotional.
there. Yeah. So anyway, it was a great lesson, and I did. And then honestly, the program started in 2003, and it went on. I don't know how robust it is now, but when I left in 2015, the program was incredible.
So besides the fact that you didn't want to be alone, what were some of the goals that you were going to, at least in your own head? I get that you put together, probably something a little different that you shared with the leadership at Hershey at the time. But like, what were your goals? How were you going to identify success for
Right.
this group
Yeah.
as they went on through the years?
I think, you start with, at the time we had 25% of women on the managers list, which is the highest level in the organization managers list. There was only 25%. So my goal was always to be at
Mm,
least 50%. And on the executive team, and again, I'm sorry, I don't even know what the number is today, but I
it's better,
do
definitely.
know that,
Yeah.
oh, it's absolutely better. I wanted women to feel like they had a voice. I wanted women to survive and thrive in a very male dominated organization. You, Hershey is a very paternalistic organization, so there is no denying that. It's male dominated and it's finance dominated. But
Hmm.
here I am, a woman marketer. I had there was like everything working against me at the time. But, I really was determined. I wanted women to feel that they had a place where they could feel safe. And we had monthly meetings and annual conferences, and the men used to wonder what goes on in those meetings. And I
Right.
think they thought we had like secret handshakes,
Yeah.
but the reality is, and I would invite them. I said, "You are
Yep.
welcome to it," and some did. You're welcome to attend anytime you want to. So I don't
Well, and I think some of them thought there was it was male bashing, right? But it wasn't about them.
absolutely.
We weren't talking about men. They were never the topic of
I
conversation.
don't care. Like, go form your own group.
They
Go
have their
form
boys
your
club.
own
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
I mean, we women, we show up to work with so many different issues than men show up to work with. So we needed to find a place where we could share and vent about being working moms, about taking care of elderly parents, we just needed a safe space to do all that. We're different.
Right.
We're different. And that's all there is to
We
it.
are.
And
That's
let's
100%.
celebrate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Well,
yeah, so
and
Betsy, let me ask you, because you were a woman in the organization. How did the program benefit you?
yeah, absolutely. I think I looked around and knew that you were the only one, right, at the
Right.
top. So that kind of sticks in your head as a 22-year-old where you're like, wow, why is there one woman in a leadership role? But I love that you had the voice behind that and, were cheerleading and bringing everyone along with you. But I think with that women in leadership group it was twofold. One was like the networking and the relationships. I got to meet people in the company outside of marketing because I might have only known the marketing ladies and the people I dealt with at the park were mostly men, right? right? So,
Right.
and there was plenty of women across the organization. So I think just networking, meeting those women that then if I happen to walk into a room that they're in, I'm going to feel comfortable because I talked to that woman. I've had a conversation. I know she has kids or whatever. So I think the networking piece of that was huge. But there was a lot of professional development stuff that we did that I still use today. And some of it was around communication and how we're different and like that emotional intelligence because women tend to be
Right.
stronger at that. And
Right.
we were talking about like the pie, right? That's
Oh,
definitely a
yeah.
future episode of it's not just your performance, but it's your image and what people say when you're not in the room. And it's the exposure and who knows that you exist. So, there was a lot of professional development pieces that I think were just so important that where else would you have gotten that? Like
Right.
there was no other place to do that. Back then there wasn't, a million social influencers or there wasn't, podcast or there were those kinds of
No.
opportunities to educate yourself. So it was you had to be educated with where you were and we,
Right.
had that opportunity to have that. So,
Oh, good. See, so I mean,
yes.
it's you're
That's
the
why you're here today.
you're the proof of the benefit, because
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is I freaking loved it. I loved
Yeah.
it. I loved every minute of it. I loved creating the content. We had an external partner with Linda Strange that helped us put it together. And I can remember,
Nice.
Betsy, because that whole you bring up exposure. We would have women going, I don't know why I don't get the attention. I don't know why I don't get opportunities. And we would go to if we had meetings where the executive team was there, and I would watch them. They wouldn't even go and interact with the executive team. And I would come up to them afterwards and go, "You want exposure? You totally had the chance, and you sat with your group of friends and didn't even interact." So I could really be a bitch about that kind of thing. And I know
Yeah.
there were some people that didn't like my approach, but if you're going to say you want it, you got to do what it takes to get it. So,
Absolutely. That exposure piece is huge. I 100% agree with that. But let's talk about your reputation, right? So you had a reputation of being a powerhouse and lovingly a hard ass. So, how much of that hard ass approach was you, right? Or how much of that did you have to sort of change and evolve because you're in this male dominated world where you couldn't be, sort of passive and laid back, that you had to have that more aggressive approach. So, and how do people take that as a woman versus if you were a man doing that?
yeah.
How did that go through
Oh
your
my God. I
career?
think every time I would ever go and speak or do anything, people would say, what's the difference between, just being aggressive and ambitious? That's just it. Ambition and a bitch are they seem to go hand in hand. And I think my biggest thing was I always wanted to support other women. And I think that's one of the things when I look around at women that have achieved and I see that they haven't supported other women, that to me is just, I would take that so personally. And maybe you would think, oh, Kim, she's a badass. But there would be times where I was like crumbling on the inside. But I really took it seriously that when you walk through those doors in the morning, no matter what's going on in your outside world, you have to it's a performance. I mean, I'm
Sure.
sorry, but when
Oh,
you're in a
absolutely. It
corporate
is.
world, if you're an entrepreneur and start your own business, you don't have to perform. But in a corporate environment, performance is necessary, especially being a woman. So I would be super sad or stressed on the inside, but just trying to kind of come in. But like people like you, the closer you and I got, like I could go into your office and go, "Oh my God, I'm dying." You know what I mean?
Right.
I had people that I could let my hair down with, but
Sure.
you tried to stay stoic, but that was always hard. But I was
So
ambitious. I
do you have any tips for that? How do you stay, cuz everybody is, to your point, balancing so much with, whether it's kids or aging parents or health issues, like how do you show up and still be authentic but also be able to continue to move forward and do your job?
Yeah, I would tell other women, you never know what a woman colleague is coming in to work with. You never know. So please, how do we treat each other with respect and give each other a break? Because you never know. Like, I know I can't go and change. Women are just not nice to each other and don't support each other. And whether it's from grade school all the way through, I'm living in this community now, and we're all at a stage of our life where we're, things are good. I live in a 55 plus community where people golf and play tennis, but there are cliques of women that form.
No, don't tell me
I
it doesn't change.
They're snarky and bitchy and they have an attitude. And so I have just, I just stay away. And the older I've gotten, the more I've removed toxic relationships from my life because it's just not worth it. So
Right.
I would say to people, if you're in a profession, you have to deal with people. So just go in and just put your best foot forward and don't let personal enter into it. And that's the hardest thing, advice to give to a woman, because we cannot help but letting personal enter into it. I have been devastated by other women through my career. Just other women I've felt so let down. I felt betrayed. And that's the worst.
Oh, absolutely.
It was way more than being betrayed because I don't think they do that. I don't think they have betrayal or jealousy or envy or the way that women do. Do you?
No, and I think part of it too maybe is like the emotional connection because I think of like during your career, right? And especially when you're in a position of influence, right? And leadership and people who maybe are around you, I don't want to say below you, but like at a lower level, they feel like they can benefit from your relationship. But then when you're not in that position, and I just have gone through this, being at a CEO level and then leaving, who you hear from and who you don't after you're not in that role is, if I take it personally, like, oh, I can't believe I haven't talked to this person. I can't believe I haven't reached out. Or if you text, they don't respond, whatever it is, it's like, oh, I guess that relationship was transactional or professional, whatever you want to call it. And I tend to have more of like wanting that emotional connection in like a real relationship. And then you're like, oh shit, guess that's not real. Guess they're not really, not that we were hanging out in the weekend kind of friends, but like having that friendly type of relationship. So I don't know if you've had that happen to you
Oh
too
my
through the years.
God, absolutely. And it's devastating. And your word transactional is exactly right. I didn't think things were just transactional.
Right.
I thought we were friend, not like let's go over to each other's house and sleep
Right.
over.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't even socialize with them, but if I went
Right.
on a business lunch with them, oh my God, we talked about kids, we talked about life, we talked about dreams, and I mean, we talked about everything. And then when I left, to never hear from them, it was just so it's devastating. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a devastating thing to realize that you were really just a throughway to a business opportunity.
Right.
That
Yeah.
and maybe that I don't know that that hurts men's feelings the way that it hurts.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting
But
to
I'll
find
never really
out, but
change that about us. I can't.
no.
That's what makes us amazing. Like, I don't want to change that about me. I
Right.
love that I have that capacity to care about other people. No,
Right.
and I can't give any advice for anybody other than to just suck it up. It's what makes us women, and what makes us different, and it's what I value most in other women. I don't know where I've had so much shit happen in my life. I don't know where I would be without the other women in my life. I don't.
Nice.
I mean, my husband was a terrible addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he's actually dead now as a result of that. A teenage daughter that lived through all that, all while I was working and building my career. If it wasn't for the women in my life, I don't know what I would have done. Seriously.
Aw.
I love the women in my world. And again, you worked with me, like all that
Right.
stuff was going on
Well,
while I would come in and be like, "Hi, everybody."
oh, yeah,
You
Miss Cheerleader. Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's what's amazing knowing what I know now or even, through the years. It's the fact that you showed up and you have a great big presence that's full of energy and optimism and such a cheerleader and who knows what was going on in your day and you'd come rolling in the office like, "Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello." Like, I mean, just on fire, like it was the best thing ever that you were at work that day and that you were just so happy to be there. So it's you always showed up and you always brought that energy and enthusiasm, and you still have that and the optimism that you need in leadership roles because everyone's looking at you. And even when, if we were
yeah.
having a bad year, or things were difficult, even professionally, things were a struggle, of course, as any business goes through, you still kept that optimism. It was like, okay, let's solve this, let's fix this. But, you weren't sitting in the corner bottled up crying that,
No.
nobody's coming or what are we going to do? It was like, okay, let's solve the problems. Let's move forward. But you did it in a optimistic way. And you saved like the ass beating for behind closed doors. So I appreciate that
Well,
because
but I will
I
also
mean,
tell you this, I swear to God, the executive team, they all knew everything that was going on in my life. And they were so supportive of me. I had to let them know. I mean, there
right.
would be times where, like, I remember once we had an executive retreat plan and I couldn't go. I couldn't leave. My situation was really bad. And they were so understanding. So, I mean,
That's good.
I don't know. But yes,
Yeah.
behind closed doors, I could,
Behind.
yeah, I could
Yeah,
be.
which you have to be, but, and we mentioned the tough love, but, yeah, I think I think you're the not I think, I know you're the only boss who ever made me cry,
Oh
and
my
I don't
God.
I don't cry, right? Like, I mean, but I will tell you, it was never mean-spirited, right? Like, you
Right.
weren't doing it to be mean, you were doing it to make people better, and, we talk about our circle, we have our circle of, of employees and team members that we used to work together. None of us work together anymore,
Mm-mm.
but we still have that, but, like, here we are 20 some years later and we haven't worked together for 10 years where there's still that group where we support each other and we cheer for each other, and it might be on text messages or it might be whatever, but I
Whatever.
mean, you formed those relationships with us how many years ago, so it was for the good, it was for the positive.
Right.
It was never to be mean, it was to make us better.
Right. And I can always remember, like, I would have died for that kind of feedback because I took that all really seriously in terms of providing feedback for performance.
Yeah, you
And,
did.
you know, we just didn't get it. It wasn't as much of a priority to others as it was to me. I think if we're all trying to get better. How are you going to get better unless
Sure.
you know? I,
No, it worked out. I mean, and maybe during the time it wasn't fine, but
I
I'm
know, and
better,
that's
so
why I will always, yeah, I know. You stuck with me and I stuck with you and yeah,
yeah,
I
and
know.
here we are all
Yeah,
these
I
years
can't
later.
here we are.
The one thing that's come up as I talk to people about this whole supporting other women, how we don't do it. Every woman you say it to, they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's
I
true," right?
know.
But the other part that's been interesting to me is that I've had women panic that like, "Oh, well, I didn't support so and so because she's not good." So, how do you kind of balance that where sometimes like this isn't like carte blanche. Like you don't have to support every woman all the time just because they're women. Like people just still need to earn, trust,
Exactly.
respect, relationships, credibility. How does that sort of work where this isn't just because you're a woman. We got your back no matter what horrible
Absolutely
decision
not.
you make or what you do.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you say, but I see what you do. Like that
Yeah,
is such a classic because women. I mean, they're so good and so polished at saying all the right things, but then in reality, when you watch what they do, it's. But that's a perfect point. It is not carte blanche. I mean, some women, their behavior and their motivations don't warrant that unconditional support. They
right.
don't. So I know. It's so tricky, and I don't have any magic bullet. I don't have any, "Oh, let me give you the 3 keys to guaranteed success."
Right.
I would just say really have empathy for other women because you never know what they're going through. Have frank and candid conversations with them and just, show up yourself being your most authentic self every day. Because I'm sorry, but you see it with your daughters and bullying at school, and I see it with these 65-year-olds here. We can't change this inherent thing that women have around being catty and about being small. I don't understand it. I can't change it. All I can
Right.
do is change me.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I can
And who you
do is
surround yourself with.
yes, is exactly. All I can do is change me and my approach. So
Well, and you have a daughter who's is she in her 30s? Oh my gosh.
34.
Oh my
Yeah, she
gosh,
was
she's
just
in her
born,
30s.
just
Oh,
like your
good lord.
girls. Like, I'm like,
I
"There's no
know.
way." They're
Yeah, she's
like
still in high
2
school in
and
my head,
5.
but just as she's grown, I mean, you got her out of the house, she's successful, she's productive, she lives her own life. Like, what were some of those sort of pieces that you were trying to teach her through the years? I mean, I'm sure, she still has to deal with that stuff when she's 30, but like any advice that you've given your daughter through the years
Oh,
just to
good God.
be able to
I
do
drive her insane. I drive her insane. Like, I would be, like, teaching her about how to do a good handshake and make eye contact as, like, a
That's
6-year-old.
so
She's
good.
just like She's so over me, you can't even imagine, you know. But I do have to tell you, Carly, I don't know how that she got into the best group of friends. And she did not experience bullying or bullshit, or, I mean, she somehow got in. And, I have spoken to teachers. They say there are certain classes that it's a really good class. Like the class of,
That's good.
2013 or 2019 was really good and solid. And Carly just serendipitously got really lucky. And she's a therapist,
That's crazy. That is so
a mental
crazy.
health therapist. She got her master's from Messiah, and now she's going to go to Oregon State to get her PhD in mental health, which is so hysterical. That a child of mine would be a mental health. And she tells me all the time how I need therapy, and So yeah, and I think we're so
That's
much alike.
amazing.
And yeah, she's a piece of work. I'll tell you that.
That's amazing.
I adore her. She's the best thing I ever did, for
But
sure.
she has been very independent from a young age, so
Oh my
that's,
God.
credited to you that you were able to raise her to
Yeah.
be so independent and a strong woman from, I
Yeah.
mean, for I feel like as long as I've known her, which is awesome.
So you know what? That whole thing about, roots to grow, wings to fly in terms of child.
Oh,
You give your kids the roots to grow, and then you give them the wings to fly. If they grow up with the confidence to take on the world, then you've done a good job.
oh, I
But I'm
love that.
always like, I think it's because I drove her so crazy, she got away. Like, I don't know what it is.
And now you're coming after her as you've gotten at
Yeah,
least a
exactly.
couple hours closer.
She's in Colorado, so I'm here now, so I'm closer. She's like, "Oh, geez, now where am I going to move?" She's going to move back to the East Coast.
Back to
No,
Pennsylvania.
she's a sweet. I mean, we talk. She's a doll. I love her. I
I love
adore
that.
her. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
thank you for bringing her up.
Okay, finish the sentence. If women truly supported each other like we should, then we would do what?
Oh, Jesus, Betsy, why don't you tell me that in advance so I could come up with something brilliant?
You're usually good on the fly.
I know.
Women
We would. Oh shit! God damn, we gotta edit this out. I don't know. We would. We should. We would um, be honest and open and authentic with each other.
I like that.
Okay, good.
Okay, any other parting words before we wrap up here
No,
of
I
just
love
any
that you're
advice as
doing it.
somebody who's made it to the other side, you had an amazing career and made that impact on women and that we still have conversations and relationships today based off of stuff you did 20 some years ago. So just any other parting words for women who are in the workforce just trying to support each other and
I just
survive
do it.
and thrive.
Honest to God, if your organization does not have a women in leadership organization of any kind, I went through a file the other day. I have so much content and I would be so happy to share it with anybody. I have so much information that somebody could really build a program internally. Because when I
That's awesome.
reflect on 31 years, yes, I mean, we had 13 record years of performance. We built really powerful brands among all of our assets. But the Women in Leadership Initiative is something that I am most proud of. So I would, if anybody ever wants to set one up, call me. I'm telling you,
Thank you.
call me.
And if people want to reach out to you, can they find you in LinkedIn? Is that the
Yes.
best way
Yeah.
to connect
Find
with
me
you?
in
Okay.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Find me
Okay,
in
great.
LinkedIn.
We'll connect that too.
Yeah.
So great. Well,
Okay.
thank you for this conversation.
Thank
It was
you.
everything that I hoped for sure. I just appreciate your authenticity and your just openness to share a lot of what was going on, in your life. It's huge. So thank you for being that kind of leader and for still showing up with that same fire 20 some years later. I love it so much.
66 and still going. Jeez. Yeah. It's a long life.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a long
That's
life. So
awesome.
live it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, for those of you listening, if this episode is something you enjoyed, please share it and tag a woman who's helped you rise. Let's keep building the community of bold women who show up for each other, not just in words, but in actions. So, please follow Loud and Lifted on Instagram, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. And if you've got a story of a woman you feel like we should feature, DM me. We're just getting started. Until next time, stay loud and lifted.